Good afternoon, fellow iStaters. This is Paul Gordon of iState.tv, and this is your daily dose of headlines you may have missed for Thursday, February 22nd, 2018, episode 32. You give us 20 minutes, and we'll give you headlines that aren't dominated with fear porn. We'll give you headlines of awareness, hope, action, and maybe a little lulls. As a matter of fact, on today's show, we're going to start right away with the lulls of the day. So if you're watching on YouTube, you missed the opening of the show, and you'll also miss the very end, which you can only hear if you watch live on my personal Facebook page, Paul Gordon, and the image of the profile matches the image on this show. Now, if you're watching live on Facebook, don't forget to stay tuned in, because I will respond to the comments after the YouTube part of the show is over. And I also have something to say about the gun grabber fear pornotopia. But you're not going to hear about the gun grabber fear pornotopia on headlines you may have missed today. If you're watching on YouTube, join me on Facebook so next time you don't miss the full show. And today's show is titled Toto for Governor? Not anymore. And you can get show notes at hisheadlines.com or check out the link to the show notes page in the description for both the Facebook page, live stream, and the YouTube video. Or you can just go to istate.tv/H032. And you can also find our audio podcast show on iTunes and Stitcher by searching for iState. On today's episode of Headlines You May Have Missed, Kansas bans Toto. Florida gun grab reversal. Bye-bye net neutrality. Turkey claims Afrin, and more. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your headlines you may have missed. Kansas to outlaw teens' dogs running for governor. That's right. That's where we get our headline for today, which is that Toto is running for governor no more. I know, I took quite a stretch there, but Kansas, Toto, dog, come on, dudes. I had to do it. I freaking had to do it. And in light of all the craziness going out there today, I thought it was appropriate to begin this show with your lulls of the day. So Kansas is attempting to shut down a loophole in election law that allows teenagers and dogs to run for governor. Now this, I'm going to say, folks, from my perspective, this is extremely disappointing. And it is for those of us whose only joy in watching elections is for the lulls we might find. And yes, lulls, such as dogs running for governor, as is happening right now in Kansas. Sadly, by the way, the dog is not Toto, actually. Toto's not actually running for governor, which that alone is a horrible disappointment. If it's going to be a dog running for governor in Kansas and it's not Toto, man, the lulls that you're missing out on, it's tragic. Apparently, Toto is not in Kansas anymore. But I did that. This is from U.S. News. Kansas House advances bill that would prevent teens' dogs from running for governor. Kansas lawmakers are moving to impose age requirements on candidates for governor, advancing legislation to eliminate a loophole. You mean eliminate a glistening hope within the law. You're just eliminating glory is what you're doing there. But anyway, they want to eliminate a loophole in a permissive state law that has sparked bids on behalf of more than half a dozen teenagers and a dog in November's gubernatorial race. I just want to say, for the record, I don't know anything about the dog. I don't know the dog's platform. I don't know what kind of dog it is. I don't know whether it's a black dog, a white dog, a brown dog. I don't know whether it's a Chinese dog. I don't know whether it's a Mexican dog. I don't care. I endorse that dog for governor. There you have it. For the first time, well, first time in a few years at least, I'm endorsing a political candidate. No, that's not true. I did endorse Vermin Supreme in the last election, so, okay. I stand corrected. Well, for the first time since the 2016 presidential election, I'm endorsing a political candidate. I'm endorsing the dog. The Kansas City Star reported that a bill passed by the state's House of Representatives on Tuesday, that's this past Tuesday, the 20th of February 2018, that would impose age requirements for candidates for most of the major statewide officers, whatever it is. Anyway, it sucks. That's the bottom line. It sucks. They've taken the joy out of elections, because if it's not lulls, it's not worth your time. Florida bill would prevent cops from confiscating guns without due process. Hold on, everybody. Get ready for the sarcastic clap. Ready? Yay, Florida! Yay! Some legislators in Florida are considering a bill that would prevent law enforcement officers from confiscating guns without due process. You're decent human beings is what you are. Apparently in Florida, with just a word from a neighbor, a relative, a spouse, the police will come and take your guns from you. And good luck slogging through the expensive, time-consuming process of getting your guns back. And this is from AmmoLand. Their headline is, Florida legislature moves to stop legalized theft of firearms. Yes, legalized theft. But, you know, that's not the only legalized theft out there. But that's, I don't want to digress here. Law enforcement officers will impound firearms when no crime has been committed. This is driven by a fear of, quote, not doing enough, unquote, combined with the demonization of firearms. Law enforcement hesitation and fear of litigation have combined to legalize the threat of firearms. Legalize. In Florida and many other states, it is a common problem that harms numerous innocent victims. Often the victims have no choice. The guns are taken by force. Other victims are asked for permission but not warned of the consequences of agreeing to the request by law enforcement. I'm going to skip the example here, and I'll just get to the bill itself. Florida Representative Cord Bird of Neptune Beach, and we all hang out at Neptune Beach every weekend, I'm sure, has introduced legislation. I mean, Neptune, I'm stuck on that. I really like that name. I really love the name Neptune Beach. I want to have a house on Neptune Beach. I want to be able to put down my address as Neptune Beach. It's poetic. It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. But anyway, I digress. He's introduced legislation to rectify this system of legalized theft of firearms. The bill H6013 removes the Florida provision requiring a court order to return a firearm, whether the firearm was taken by an officer with or without a search warrant upon viewing a breach of peace. And the breach of peace statute is being used in Florida to justify the impounding of the firearms and failing to return them unless a court order is obtained. In other words, you have to prove your innocence. You know, due process, because there is no rule of law, there's only rule of power. But anyway, many firearms cost less than $400, while the filing fee alone for a legal action costs $400. The good news is, if it's a high point, you don't have to worry about it. You just say, you know what, I can get a brick for free down the road. It ain't no thing. That was mean, I'm sure. If you're a high point user, I apologize in advance for the fact that you're a high point user. Okay. Turn your phone into a 3D printed scientific microscope. Thanks to 3D printing, your smartphone could become a microscope that is good enough to be used by scientists. With a 3D printed small clip-on device, your smartphone can see objects as small as 1/200th of a millimeter. Now, in scientific terms, by the way, if you look it up, the technical term is pretty freaking small. I looked it up. I was trying to understand, like, is that a big deal? And I saw pretty freaking small. Like, oh, I guess it is. I guess it's scientifical. The device is being developed by researchers in Australia, and this is from Engadget. 3D printed smartphone microscope is good enough for scientists. Your smartphone could soon be a fully functional microscope capable of examining samples as small as pretty freaking small. Australian researchers have developed a clip-on device that requires no external light or power sources to produce a clear picture of microscopic organisms and cells from animals, plants, and blood. And it can be made by anyone with a 3D printer, as the team is sharing the 3D printing files publicly. So it's open source, baby. That's what I'm all about, the open sources. You know, that open source is anti-IP, and I'm all for that. IP is fundamentally against human progress, and IP is intellectual property. Anyway, I'm anxious to know, anyone out there, if you know any other technical terminologies for really small stuff that's scientifical. I have pretty freaking small. If you do, put it in the comments there, and I'll address it after the show. And if you don't put it in the comments there, and I don't have comments after the show, I will go fetal, and I will live stream it, and then afterwards I'll create a 10-hour loop on YouTube with me going fetal. And that'll be on your heads. So just remember that. If you're listening to this show right now live on Facebook and you're not commenting, you did this to me. Before it happened, you did this to me. The death of net neutrality. Today's February 22nd, 2018. Wow, I read that. Today's February 22nd, 2018, as opposed to the other February 22nd, 2018, might see the death of net neutrality. The FCC has set today as the day to officially end the Obama-era regulations in the FCC called net neutrality. And this is from ABC News. FCC expected to repeal net neutrality rules on Thursday. The Federal Communications Commission could officially repeal the Obama-era net neutrality rules by publishing the order to the National Register on Thursday, according to 3 sources briefed on the matter, inevitably triggering a wave of opposing lawsuits from state attorneys general. Of course. The National Register is the official journal of the U.S. federal government regulations, and one source stressed the timing of the FCC's publication could shift from, it could shift from tomorrow, I guess from Thursday. We'll see. And if it actually happens, I will probably cover it on Monday. Maybe not. If it's blasted all over the place, I probably won't, because this is headlines you may have missed. The reversal is a hallmark victory for FCC Chairman Ajit Pai, whose tenure has seen him strongly advocate for reduced regulation in lockstep with the president who appointed him, Donald Trump. Boy, that's not a loaded sentence there. They're not trying to imply anything with that. They can't just credit the guy with having his own opinions, and maybe Donald Trump appointed him because he knows that his view of regulation is simply the same as Donald's. He's not walking lockstep with Donald. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump had recently floated out the idea of the American 5G network being owned by the government, and Ajit Pai's response was, dude, that's a sucky idea. So, no, I don't see him as walking lockstep with Donald Trump. But ABC News, this is another example of a straight news article that is injected opinion into the piece. If you want to write an opinion piece, ABC News, just write a freaking opinion piece and stop trying to slip in your propaganda into straight news. It's pretty devilish of you, subjectively speaking, of course. And I'm not going to speak here about what do I feel about net neutrality one way or another. Obviously, if anybody who knows me knows I'm not for government regulations, because I'm not necessarily, I'm against coercive enterprise models of governance, but I've spoken about this in the past, and I probably will in the future again. Turkey threatens Syria over Afrin. Now, this is going to be a two-parter here. I'm going to have one story, and then after this, I have another story that's kind of going to follow up on it. They're both, if you look at it, you might think it's like the same story repeated, but it's not. And I'll let the nuance in the differences will be revealed, and you'll understand why there's two different articles on iState.tv. So the Turks are ratcheting up their war rhetoric as they continue with their Orwellian-named invasion and act of terror against Afrin called Operation Olive Branch. I mean, they might as well called it Operation Peace and Love. You know what? Or call it Operation Freedom. I know nobody's done that before. Okay, I'll just go on. They're none too pleased with the Syrian government throwing its support behind Afrin and are now threatening to attack the Syrian government itself, which is a little bit tricky because they're all part, the Syrian government is supported by the Russians, and right now the Russians and the Turks are closely allied in Syria, so, wow, it's a tangled mess. Anyway, this is from Washington Times. Turkey vows to strike Syrian regime forces aiding Kurds. Ankara is vowing to take out Syrian government and pro-regime forces sent into the embattled city of Afrin to aid Syrian Kurds defending the enclave against the ongoing Turkish offensive there. That guy, Ibrahim Kalin, I got his name. I said it all right. All right. Spokesman for the Turkish President Erdogan told reporters in Ankara Wednesday that any member of the Syrian armed forces or associated paramilitary groups in Afrin will be considered legitimate targets by Turkish forces. Now I'll go to the next story here. Turk Reich vows to keep Syria out of Syria or Afrin. And yeah, I'm making a somewhat of a leap here, but I think it's an easy leap to make. Turkey's call to assure that no pro-regime group will enter Afrin underscores the true nature of the Afrin invasion. It's not to fight terrorists. It's to take land and keep land. And Erdogan told Turkish media on Tuesday, that's February 20th, of 2018, that the Turks had repelled pro-regime militia groups entering Afrin, a claim that is disputed by the Syrian Kurds and the pro-regime forces. He also added that pro-regime forces would never be allowed entry into Afrin, which is part of Syria, not Turkey. So the statement confirms to many, and I'm not the only one to say this, but yes, including myself, that Erdogan is simply taking an opportunity to grab land as part of his Nazi-inspired Turkish Lebensraum, living space strategy. And you might want to Google Erdogan Lebensraum, and you'll come up with some interesting stuff. So this strategy. And by the way, I don't know if I said this, I think I just said it, but just in case, Lebensraum simply means a living space. And it's the idea that for the Nazis, it was, the Third Reich. They needed to create a certain amount of space for the Aryan race to fully thrive. And this is what's underlying the strategy with Erdogan. He believes that the Turkish race also has to have the space to fully thrive. And this strategy is just one of the reasons why I refer to the Erdogan regime as the Turk Reich. Its actions in Afrin also revealed just how eerily similar to the Nazis the Erdogan government truly is. And what Erdogan says was that Syria's Afrin was closed for now. So this is, Afrin is still a part of Syria, the Syrian government, and Turkey is invading the Syrian government's sovereignty. Not that I put much into the sovereignty of governments, but be that as it may, within the state-by-state-based parameters, Turkey is an uninvited guest. So there you have it. Ancient DNA suggests humans are mutts. I think many of us probably are not surprised in this, and I'm not going to say this is definitive, but it's interesting. It points in a direction that I think most of us kind of already believe, that we are all mutts. And so the data is in, and yes, We're mutts. The idea of a pure race is going up in smoke as ancient DNA is revealing that humans are constantly mixing and remixing with one another. And this is from Science Daily. Ancient DNA tells tales of humans' migrants' history. So essentially, what the DNA shows is that migration is it's not a sudden thing. It's a gradual, continual flow. So this is the lead author, David Reich, said let me just read a segment here. Together with his lab's previous work and that of the other pioneers of ancient DNA, the big picture message is that our prehistoric ancestors were not nearly as homebound as once thought. There was a view that migration is a very rare process in human evolution. Not so, says the ancient DNA. Actually, Reich says, the orthodoxy, the assumption that present-day people are directly descended from the people who always lived in that same area, is wrong almost everywhere. Instead, the view that's emerging, for which David is an eloquent advocate, is that human populations are moving and mixing all the time. Illinois bill to outlaw AR-15s and ghost guns. Yeah. In the wake of the Florida shooting, Illinois gun-grabbing ideologues are seizing on the fear-porn momentum to introduce a bill that would ban AR-15s and so-called ghost guns, which we call Liberty guns on iState.tv. The bill hopes to take advantage of a well-orchestrated campaign of fear porn that exploited the desert children and exploited the survivors of the shooting for the purpose of producing, in the non-gov human cattle, a begging for more liberties to be crushed in the name of safety and children. Ooh, I got to run past. I got two more stories. Alt-right banned from Medium, which defines the term as anyone right of Marx. So Medium has decided to ban the alt-right from its social media platform, and it's decided to define the alt-right very broadly to include people like Mike Cernovich, who I don't really necessarily like him, but he's not alt-right. Certainly has views in common with them, but he's not alt-right. So the platform apparently wishes to become an echo chamber for statist progressivism, and there's more on that in the show notes. I want to get to this last story. Europe's rules stifling Facebook. It seems all of Facebook's efforts to satisfy the onerous privacy rules of Europe, the so-called GDPR rules, is failing to hit the mark, according to a study recently conducted by researchers at the University of Madrid. Facebook is it's basically being accused of holding personally identifiable data of over 40% of the overall EU population. And you heard the beep, so I had to stop, because that's how this show works. When the 20 minutes of headlines runs out, I stop. And that's what I've done. So that's all that we have for today's headlines you may have missed. If you'd like to read more about the stories we covered today, just go to isheadlines.com and find the show notes for February 22nd, 2018, or check out the link to the show notes page in the description for both the Facebook live stream and the YouTube video, or go to iState.tv/H032. You can also find our audio podcast show on iTunes and Stitcher by searching for iState. Give it 2 or 3 hours and it'll show up. It'll take me about half hour or so before I get this posted once this show is complete, and then it takes another 2 or 3 hours for it to show up in iTunes and Stitcher. And don't forget to join me tonight on iSDaily Thursday with Lou Sandra at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Liberty Principle Facebook page. As usual, we'll take you from a shorter leash to a longer leash to finally off the leash altogether, and the link to that page is in the video description. As always, remember, those who need to control thoughts need to control news. Until tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, this is Paul Gordon of iState.tv saying have a great rest of your day, fellow iStaters.